Hello, everybody. We have again our discussion club of New Geopolitics Research Network, and we again together trying to analyze what's going on the Russian-Ukrainian war, and of course beyond and around. Today we are going to talk with topics. Of course, we'll talk about the situation on battlefield, and some additional points like international support and initiative. For example, NATO enlargement with Finland and Swedish and Turkish Eastern Bazaar style. We'll talk about it. Of course, about the Land-Lease Act of United States and 40 billions help for Ukraine connected to Land-Lease Act. EU failed attempts for six package of sanctions. Again, Hungary trying to bargain in and tries to sell Russia more expensive to European Union allies. And maybe we'll try to talk about the CSTO meetings and what does it mean and what could be the consequences for CSTO, Kremlin, and Ukraine after this meeting. So first of all, I'd like to start with situation battlefield. It looks like it's pretty calm because it's not so much news as before, but in reality it's very intensive battles, very intensive. President Zelensky told it's really a hell on the land on Donbas because Russians is trying to send all of possible troops to Severodonetsk and Popasna area, getting at least this victory or demonstrate this victory, how they could say the deliberation of so-called LNR, because this area close to Severodonetsk and Popasna, it means that Russia could get administrative line of Luhansk Oblast, and they could officially proclaim that LNR finally deoccupied from Ukrainian forces. So obviously the second stage of Russian full-scale operations is on the culmination now. They failed to achieve their goals on wider front from Kharkiv to Zaporizhia and from Izum to Gulay-Pole, what we're talking about before. So now they are trying to be successful at least on Severodonetsk and Popasna area. Direction could be proclaimed the greatest victory yet because of formally gaining administrative border of Luhansk Oblast. On south direction, no active Russian operations now. On northern direction, Russians trying to demonstrate their capabilities and intentions to attack again Sumy, Chernihiv, or maybe even Kiev Oblast. But I think it's still mostly demonstration to force Ukraine to stretch its forces along a broad front, not allow Ukrainian forces to concentrate of the counteroffensive operations. So, colleagues, what do you think, Igor? Your estimation on the battlefield now?
Yeah, absolutely agree with you with your estimation. Just want to add a couple of words about the Luhansk direction. We say today is the most problematic direction for Ukrainian defense. Russian troops are obviously trying to push Ukrainian troops out of this region and to give the possibility to the political leadership of Russia to proclaim the great victory and so-called liberation of Luhansk People Republic. And this context is very interesting to mention. Putin is personally commanded the operations on the battlefield, and I think this to some extent might be true because we see that the tasks that our Russian army is fulfilling on the battlefield in the eastern Ukraine are more political tasks than military one, because from the military point of view, in different directions, the actions of Russian army are not logically, let's say, logically in military terms of view, but if we take into account this information about Putin's attempts to command its troops. So everything becomes clear. So they have the task to, let's say, wider task to liberate Luhansk People Republic, or let's say shorter task to seize, to capture this or that city or village. So yeah, this shows that Putin intrudes into the whole process of commanding the Russian troops. But what we see, that Russians are suffering big losses. Yeah, they are pushing, trying to push Ukrainian troops out of this region, but the losses that the losses that they suffer in this during such an attacks are very high, and actually they don't have too many reserves on this direction. They gather all that they have there. They even gather the wounded, likely wounded personnel. They gather together the half-destroyed units and try to complete one combat unit and send it back to the battlefield. So it's not very smart moves in military terms, but they have no choice because they have the direct task from the highly political command. And this shows again that the Russian troops waging the war according to the Soviet doctrines, where political wish of the state leadership of the country played a significant, or in sometimes crucial role in actions of the army on the big battlefield.
I totally agree with both of you, but I'd also like to add some points. At first, to my point of view, Russia is focusing on attempts to cut down the main supply lines between Ukrainian troops in Luhansk Oblast and Donetsk region. That means that their main successes of the latest day were around Popasna, which was captured several weeks ago. And if we look at the map, battles are occurring right now just several kilometers from the road which ties Severodonetsk and Lysychansk agglomeration with Bakhmut, another important hub, logistical hub that ties the whole Ukrainian units in Lugansk region with Ukrainian command inside our positions. So that poses a real threat, but at the same time, I think that Ukrainian command was prepared for such development, and there is an issue: what tactics will be decisive for this battle for Severodonetsk and Lysychansk region. As for my assumption, I think that Ukrainian command decided not to withdraw from these two cities, and are preparing for battles on the streets. And it will obviously cost a high price for Russians. And also, I'd like to mention that there are many facilities, not so maybe without such big catacombs as they are in Azovstal, but also these areas are quite useful and quite comfortable for Ukrainian forces to defend. And it may take a long time for Russian forces to cut down all the supply lines and to encircle Ukrainian troops that may defend these positions for quite a long time, for weeks or even months. And this may be the main strategy of Ukrainian forces to exhaust Russian battalion tactic groups, and when enough Western weaponry will be accumulated, and we will be prepared to implement this new weapon in different domains, then Ukraine will turn into big, massive counterattacks. But even now, Ukraine tries to push out and to whip out Russian forces from Kharkiv region, and this was the main success of Ukrainian armed forces till now, when Russian artillery was moved from the outskirts of Kharkiv, and also Ukraine conducts several successful counterattacks on supply lines that connects Russia with its units near Izum. But until now, there is no clear data on how these Ukrainian achievements may be sustained, and whether Ukrainian troops are capable to cut down and circle Russians near Izum. So we will cover these developments in our next podcasts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sure,
just a couple of words to add. Absolutely agree, and just forgot to mention this: our Ukrainian troops advances in north to Kharkiv. It's very important because it makes a threat to the Izum grouping of Russian troops. Even if we are not able today to move further to, as you mentioned, Volodymyr, to cut the supply lines from Russia to this Izum grouping via the Kupiansk Izum, this road. The positive effect of such advances of Ukrainian troops is that they make Russian troops to distract attention from the Izum and to relocate them back to the Kharkiv direction. So that's such advances of our troops on Kharkiv direction is the troops for Ukrainian troops in the region southern to Izum for defending from the Russian groupings in Izum region. And regarding the Severodonetsk and Lysychansk, absolutely agree. It's the big agglomeration, big cities, which will be, I think, turned into some kind of fortress, and it will be very difficult for Russians to get the Ukrainian troops out of these cities, to capture the cities. So again, it will cost. It will be done with a great cost for Russian troops, as we could see it in, for example, in Azov.
Yeah, absolutely right. Only one point that to totally cut the supply lines from Russia to Izum group of forces, and they need to cross the river. I mean, the Ukrainian forces need to cross the river, and it's not easy in these conditions. That's why it was kind of some slowing of the Ukrainian counteroffensive operations here. To make a conclusion on this part, I'd like to say that obviously Russians is going to the end of the second stage of this operation. Obviously, it was not successful again, and I think that Russians will try to go to the third stage of these operations. The main goal of this stage will be frozen conflict, trying to fix the line and trying to prolong this conflict on at least for this new line of the between Ukrainian and Russian forces, and propose to our Western partners and Ukrainian leadership to sign something like a Minsk III or maybe Istanbul 1, 2, 3 or something like this. And it's very interesting that now we started to have appearing of some propositions from Western side, from Eastern side, in medias, in social networks, And I asked Volodya to analyze and compare the Italian propositions for some future negotiations with 15 points we had in publishing in open sources after the Istanbul negotiations. I think we could find some similarity on these propositions, and it means that actually on the basis of the Istanbul results, Istanbul points, somebody is trying to propose to Ukraine and Russia, or maybe it's Russia proposing for Italian sources some exits or some resolution of this conflict. Volodya, what did you find on the comparison of these two propositions, two concepts?
Yes, just several days ago, the Italian Ministry of Foreign Affairs has submitted to the United Nations its peace plan, which provides for a ceasefire and a gradual settlement of the situation in Ukraine. This plan includes 4 main stages. I will point them. The first is ceasefire and demilitarization of the front under United Nations supervision. Then Ukraine's rapid accession to the European Union and its neutral status without joining NATO. The next stage is an agreement between Ukraine and Russia on the disputed territories of Donbas and Crimea to resolve disputes over internationally recognized borders. And the last one is a new treaty between big powers in Europe and Russia to provide a big security deal. So I think that these points correspond in many ways with those agreements and those negotiation positions which were proclaimed during a last met in Istanbul between Ukrainian side and Russians, but at the same time, I think that Italian plan avoid pitfalls. For example, for me, it is not clear how this deal with between Ukraine and Russia will be achieved, because until now Russia is talking with us with the language of ultimatums. And the only way to achieve any compatible position in negotiations with Russia is to defeat them on the battlefield. So these points may come truth only after defeat of Russia. And still we don't know to what level will be both sides, Russia and Ukraine, will be exhausted, and situation inside Russian elites. It's also very important factor. So to my estimation, Italian initiative that just in some way repeat that was already discussed in Istanbul, while on some way it may be the first scene that Russia is trying to make some under-carpet diplomacy inside European Union, and through some European countries tries to push agreements that will lead us to another status quo, another frozen conflict that will interrupt in a new war for several years, which will be used by Russia for gaining more power, rebuilding its damaged army, and this is not acceptable for Ukraine in such terms. And after all these heavy losses, after these months of war.
Yeah, of course. I mean that yeah, it's kind of trying to check the reaction of Ukrainian European societies, I think, and that of course the differences between situation Minsk 1, Minsk 2 discussed and signed, that in that time Russia get success on the battlefield, Ilovaisk and Debaltseve, and that Russia could dictate the conditions, and unfortunately at that time Ukraine signed that agreements. Now situation I think is different, but Russia, first of all, they hope for next military victory and a military success on battlefield, and maybe they hope very, very much for next winter season with high oil and gas prices, and try to press on the Europeans that they press and make Ukraine stop the war and stop the counteroffensive operations, offensive operations, and then sign something like the ceasefire with Russia to avoid economical and energy catastrophical situation in Europe. I think that Russia is very much counting on this situation, not a battlefield now because they don't have any prospects for military success, but maybe a success on energy and economical battlefield, let's say.
Yeah, absolutely. Russia is doing what is doing always best. It's blackmailing Europe. It's also worth mentioning the position of President Macron to save the intentions to save the Putin's face, and the Scholz, Chancellor Scholz supports him. Also, we all know that Scholz still makes the obstacles for sending the weaponry to Ukraine, which was supported by Bundestag almost three weeks ago, but still we have nothing. And so, I think in such a way, Putin is using all his power and all his possibility to push on the European politicians to gain its goals in Ukraine, because the military one he cannot achieve at the moment on the battlefield. So now he is using his political levers in Europe. So the main task is for Ukrainian state leadership not to accept this, not to allow them to take us in some kind of the Minsk III or Istanbul 1 or whatever.
Yeah, I think for Ukraine it's a very clear situation. Ukrainian victory means the territorial integrity and sovereignty for all of Ukrainian state, and it means that the total deoccupation of all of territories, including Crimea and Donbas. And this is a clear model of Ukrainian victory. Of course, the European economical leaders, if it's not normally to call them oligarchs, but I think that we could say that European oligarchs who influence on European economy is not very happy with situation with Ukraine continue to fight. It means that we even cannot imagine what kind of consequences could be for global economy if Ukraine wins this conflict. It will be total changing of the European economical model, especially Germany, which should oriented now on absolutely different sources of energy. It will change prices, change lines of supplying, links between all of these energy, I would say energy influence in groups, from nuclear energy, gas energy, green energy. It's a absolutely totally very deep regrouping of the oligarchat in Europe, and we didn't discuss it yet, but I think it will be one of the main process. And of course, Putin very count on these oligarchs, which would try to, and they, of course, they're trying to stop.
Sure, because these oligarchs, for example, German oligarchs, it's not the big secret that all of them are funding all the German parties and
of course
the Scholz party. So these guys come to Scholz and say, so you have to do this, this, and this. And he has two choices: or to support Ukraine and to take the right position, let's say, or to think about his party, his political future, and to do what his financial supporters tell him what to do.
Yeah, of course, because to support Ukraine, it means to support changes, to support global changes, and then very deep changes in energy balances. And of course, if you can imagine, we are oligarchs, German oligarchs sitting on the very nice positions with Russians, making for years. We planned for years At least for actually the energy plan for Germany was for like 2030 changing to green energy. So at least kind of 6-7 years of very planned profits, very high profit, and now everything destroyed.
But it doesn't mean that by 2030 they will
Of course,
from
of
gas
course.
to green energy. These are plans, only
Yeah,
plans.
the key element that they stop nuclear energy, it means that there are no chances for nuclear energy to supersede this oligarchat, and now Ukraine changing everything. Because if we stop on 48 hours, like Ministry of Finance or Economy of Germany told it to our embassy, just guys, just enjoy Russian rule, and we will make money. So now they are in shock. Actually, they don't show this, but they are in shock, and they of course they asking Ukraine through any sources, just stop it, stop, make a Minsk free, and we will leave like before 24 February because it's disaster. They're trying to say that it will be disaster, but guys, we have disaster already. We have disaster of Bucha, we have disaster of all of Ukrainian cities like Chernihiv. I'm not talking Mariupol, and this is crazy. This is crazy because unfortunately, European oligarchs cannot believe that their lives will be changed by Ukraine. This is a paradox because they didn't count on such a scenario even after 2014. That's why they stop all of real sanctions against Russians after Crimea, because they told that, okay, let's stop here, and Putin promised that it won't be any new huge full-scale operation like this. So continue this topic. I think it will be logically go to our last part with NATO situation with enlargement and Turkish Eastern Style Bazaar with bargaining about these two great countries joining NATO, but Turkey is trying to stop it and block it, trying to solve their problems, political problems, problems with military technical cooperations. And remembering Hungary with Orban, it looks like NATO started to be real bazaar when every country trying to solve their problems, not to defend each other, but to solve personal problems. I'm not sure that we're talking about the NATO as a defensive bloc, but like about some mechanism to solve our personal problems. And it's nice, but it's not very effective for global security.
Yeah, when you watch all this, what's happening now with Turkish veto and with Orban's position towards the sixth package, essential package of the European Union, and the claims of Croatian president. So the question arises again: what NATO will do if Russia wants to make a decision to attack it? So will we see the immediate reaction of the NATO, or shall we see such kind of bargaining again?
Yeah, guys, stop! I have one problem. Let's solve it, and after this, I will support this operation.
Sure.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Of course, Russia doesn't have any. I'm sure doesn't have any possibility to attack none of the NATO states. If Russia could do some harm to NATO, Finland and Sweden would have never made an attempt to join NATO. But now they see that Russia is weak enough, and they can allow them to join NATO.
Well, my point of view is that this situation we are discussing right now is manifesting the total collapse of international organizations, and NATO is among them. So, I mean, when...
Volodya, what about CSTO? Do you think it's more effective?
No, obviously no. But what we are witnessing is that bilateral relations between countries are more reliable and important in terms of dealing with such a big security issues like Ukrainian war in Ukraine. Just for last several years, we were witnessing disaster towards OSCE mission in Caucasus region in Nagorno-Karabakh, and since the beginning of large-scale invasion against Ukraine, OSCE mission is also whipped out from Ukraine, and also true about the United Nations, when we talked about Italian initiative to implement demilitarization under the United Nations supervision. I wonder how United Nations may implement such a mission in terms of totally paralyzed Security Council. We cannot imagine such a big military operation like it was in days of Korean War in 1950s, for example. Until now, there are too many misunderstandings, and the level of distrust is too high to implement such missions.
I think that NATO has a chance, of course, to be more effective. Maybe the Russian-Ukrainian war will change the some procedure, because it is possible to make reforms. I mean, for example, it's possible to divide some political procedures and military procedures from the veto right. And of course, if you're talking about the membership, obviously, I think that all members will support that it should be veto, because it kind of a lot of political problems with some countries always happening, but from military and military political circles, it's possible to exclude it, veto. And of course, if we're talking about the concrete situation with Ukraine, I think that Rammstein coalition and the Lend-Lease process is much more effective than we have in NATO now, and we see that at least United States working very effectively and very fast, even looking at the American bureaucracy, but still we have Lend-Lease already in act, and we've got this 40 billion support from United States now, waiting for final signature of Biden. And I think it's absolutely great results. Of course, it needs some time to be implemented, to send weapon to Ukraine, but now we're counting on the weeks, and I think it's great news. Of course, it's very tough for Ukrainian forces, Ukrainian soldiers, to fight and trying to stop this hell Putin forces in Ukraine, but I think it will be successful.
You mentioned just a few words about CSTO. There was a summit recently of CSTO, and the main result of the summit is this organization is almost dead. We haven't seen any support from CSTO members. Despite this is the military political organization, because, for example, there was the critics from the Armenian Prime Minister Pashinyan that CSTO didn't help Armenia in its war against Azerbaijan. We know about the problems of the Tajik army that totally depends on the 201 military base in Russian military base in Tajikistan, so it's totally rely on this military base. And after Russia withdraw its troops from this base to Ukraine, Tajiks have big problems with Talibs who are now are being very active on the Tajik border and shelling this border checkpoints on Afghan and Tajik border. And as for Kazakhstan, we also remember the attempt of coup d'etat in Kazakhstan, and Kazakh forces didn't have the possibility to manage with this internal problem, so they had to ask CSTO to intervene in this problem and to solve this problem for them. But this all these CSTO tools were predominantly, but not predominantly, these were the Russian tools. So if we compare CSTO to NATO, so CSTO it's like it's nothing in military terms.
Yeah, it's actually from the beginning, the CSTO was the copy of NATO, trying to continue Warsaw Pact, and it was only military Kremlin projects compared to SNG, and trying to keep the military control of Russians on this post-Soviet area. Fortunately, Ukraine never been even participating in this meeting since beginning 1992. And of course, just to finish, but it was very interesting initiative, which is we didn't discuss by Putin, that SNG could be invited as an observer to CSTO. I think it's it's a crazy idea, trying to multiplying of everything what could be connected to Russia, and of course I'm sure that it won't happen. It won't help to Putin to keep any strong positions on post-Soviet area. Ukraine will do everything to destroy it, and I hope that next week we will talk more about good news and about victory. Colleagues, I thank you very much for all of listening us, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава.